All right. Good morning. In Hmong, that's, well, no, first I should speak in Pastor Teskey's language. Good morning, Herr Teskey. But in Hmong, Na Zhong Xiang Zhao. And I'm learning a little Vietnamese too. It's Xin Chào Bui Song. So that's fun. You can kind of hear the sing-songy. I wouldn't say it's real beautiful. It's not beautiful like Spanish, but it's more rough and guttural like German and Hebrew. So, you know, I'm already set for that, right? And good morning, Pastor Lambert. Now I have to say another greeting. Mesiara.
Thank you.
Mesirende.
Hey.
That's how we spoke in Nigeria. Yeah. Idimfo, asang. Yeah. So my presentation will give you a flavor of Kelu, as I explained in the sermon. And how much time do I have? Okay, hour. Yeah, I'll try to keep it to that. The opening slide comes from Mission and Ministry at our Wisconsin Lutheran Seminary. I just presented there 2 weeks ago, so I thought that's fresh. I won't change the slides. But the first picture you see comes from a small group in North Vietnam meeting around God's Word, which we have taught them, and then they go out and share it. And this might surprise you that we work with a very large church body called the Hmong Fellowship Church, which has 130,000 members and about 1,500 church leaders. Call them pastors if you will. They don't have all the training our pastors get, but that's our main mission, is giving them training, and we're working with smaller groups, like about 60 at a time. That's all part of the story. So I don't have a clicker, so I have to tell who is it? Emory. Okay, I have to tell the Emory board to hit another one, and we'll see where we end up. Oh yeah, that's fancy, but you can go on to the next one too. It is part of our gospel ministry, and as if you know me from my time in Western Washington, and oh hi, good to see you, McMurray's. I love coffee, and at our church, Messiah in Olympia, we elevated our coffee to a full snobbery status beyond all others. Like Paul boasted as a Pharisee, well, I boast as a barista. And so when people told me, oh, you're going to Vietnam, you're going to love the coffee there. We love the Vietnamese coffee. So I was very much looking forward to it. There's coffee shops all over. Mainly we go to Hanoi, but I imagine they're in Ho Chi Minh in Saigon too. And we go for our first coffee, and most people drink it this way. They prefer to drink it cold. I like it hot. And it's a little bit of strong coffee and then sweetened condensed milk and a sweetener of some kind. Yuck. I don't want that. Just black. And they also make this thing called egg coffee, which I haven't tried yet. I might try it. I think, why put an egg in your coffee? So when I went, I said, just black coffee. And they only had espresso, so they made Americano. And I'm sipping the Americano, and something's a little off. It's not right. This is not Seattle coffee. So I discovered, next slide, the reason behind it. And if you're a snob like me, you know what this means. They grow Robusta coffee there. Most of the world's coffee that you'll find in your can of Folgers and Hills Brothers comes from this type of bean, which they can grow on low elevation in full sun with not nearly as much care as the fine coffee. And it's got high caffeine content, and you may love it, I don't. So that's what I tasted. It's Robusta. Found out that after Brazil, Vietnam grows the most Robusta coffee in the world. They do have some of the finer coffee up in the mountains, and I eventually found places in Hanoi where I could get my snobby coffee and enjoy it. But it is, part of my journey is a coffee journey, and I'm enjoying it. So next one. I started out here in the Northwest. Just a few of us, like Joe Johnson and Pastor Wilcox in Tacoma, we're Northwest natives. And I was born in Tacoma and baptized, the next one, at Faith Lutheran in Tacoma. And if you look closely, it's my own dad's signature, next slide, because he served as the pastor at Faith Lutheran. And the few days a year that we do see Mount Rainier, it's always beautiful. And there's different shades to it, and that's over the industrial harbor of Tacoma with a beautiful view of Rainier. That's where I was born and have, in my ministry, been in the shadow of Rainier all these years. Next one. So my mom and dad came out here as my dad's first parish assignment in 1953, and I was a baby there. I was the last of 5 that were born here in Washington. The rest, I'm sad to say, they were born in Milwaukee. That's their story, not my story. So next slide. There's the building. It's still the same building there at Faith Tacoma. They have added on. Pastor Teskey served there. And next slide. And this is when my grandpa came out to visit. And the car, now I'll just see, does anyone recognize the car? Yeah, it was 54, but close. And that's the car my dad had. And just to loop around this I think is a great story. He drove that car out here and kept it until he went back to Wisconsin. But years later, I come out to this district in 1988 to start the Mission Exploratory in Olympia. My parents come out to visit, and the installation took place at Faith Tacoma because we didn't have anything in Olympia. And 96th and 96th and Pacific, there was a gas station at the corner there. And my dad was just super loyal guy. If he found a guy he liked in the community who did something, he just stuck with him. So the mechanic there is named Johnny, and my dad always went there. So here, decades later, we go back and fill up, and it's Johnny. And my dad gets out and says, "Hey, Johnny." And Johnny looks, he says, "54 Ford." Didn't remember my dad's name, but he remembered the car. Well, anyway, next slide. So then my dad took a call to Milwaukee, and I grew up on the south side. That explains my Wisconsin accent at Centennial Lutheran there. I enjoyed that too. That's out on Morgan Avenue and 24th. Next slide. Cool cars, right? And we had a Ford station wagon, and as every pastor family knows, what do you do on vacation? You don't have much money. You visit relatives. So my Uncle Joel lived in South Carolina. We drove out there to visit him. Next slide. And there I'm helping my sister Chris at the Bubbler at Wilson Park on the south side of Milwaukee. And my sister is the mother of that pastor right there. So if you didn't already see the resemblance between us, yeah, there is. It's a blood connection. Next slide. Then my dad took a call to La Crosse, and I was confirmed there wearing my elephant pants of 1974. Next slide. Then my dad took a call to Wisconsin Lutheran Seminary. Next. And we lived on the top of the seminary hill with just a fantastic sledding hill. You could sled down the hill onto the pond, and at the pond we could shovel and ice skate. So I really enjoyed our time there. And then I went to Kettle Moraine Lutheran High School next and graduated there with my grandpa Salzard there, my grandma Nitz, my parents. And next slide. Then I followed in the path of my father and grandfather, who both attended Northwestern College. My grandfather, over 100 years ago, he went there. My dad in the late 1940s, and then I was there in the late 70s. So it's very common in WELS families. You know that, pastor, grandfather, grandson, great-grandson, so on. Isaac's the next generation. And next slide. Graduated in 87. I taught for a couple years in area Lutheran high schools, but then in 88, I received the call, next one, to start the Mission Exploratory in Olympia. And I just put one picture from all the time I was there of our soccer camp, because I really enjoyed that a lot, and it brought a lot of people in the community. Well, now, next one, bring us more up to speed. This is our family. My wife, Catherine, and youngest daughter, Talitha, are right here. You'll see them in the upper right when we were celebrating the New Year. And yeah, that is a Packers sweatshirt. I am still a Packers fan. It's for life. And then in the lower right, our daughter Ruth in the background near the menorah, and our son-in-law Conifer. That was during their vicar year. and now he has graduated from the seminary and received the assignment to serve as missionary to London. So he's part of that London team. And in the very middle is our daughter Irena, who manages a bank in Olympia. To her right, our daughter Faith, about to graduate from University of Washington. And in the upper left is our granddaughter Isla, and lower left, our son Ivor and his wife Mackenzie. And then one more family photo, next one. I got a couple more. Yeah, so there's Conifer and Ruth, who are the WELS missionaries for London. And just as I'm waiting to move to Vietnam, they're waiting to get all the permissions lined up to go to London, along with missionary Mike Hartman. Next one. And I got to finish with grandkids. You know, it's new to me, not to all of you, but to many of you. That's our newest one, is baby Emmanuel, son of Ruth and Conifer. And what a contrast. You know, he's all set to go to church, but our granddaughter's at a monster truck show. Variety is the spice of life, they say. Okay, next. So then 3 years ago, just about 3 years ago, I received a call to serve as a world missionary to the Hmong people in Vietnam. I had received a taste of world missions along with Pastor Lambert going to Nigeria years ago when Pastor Weiser from Bellevue supervised that whole program. And then eventually I got through Don Abenanti in Portland, if anybody knows him. He got me connected in Asian missions on an administrative committee, and I got to visit India and Nepal. And I guess they were desperate, and they said, well, there's this guy that's, he's been overseas a little bit, maybe he'd do it. So I said, yeah, I'll do it. Then I was installed there along with Paul Borman, who's the missionary in Tigard, Oregon, in the Restart there, home mission Restart in our district. And that was during COVID restrictions, so it was only online. At the right was my my second visit there. On my first visit, I learned that the Hmong guys love the WELS. We teach the truth of God's word, and they had not heard that explanation of God's Kelu, God's grace before. So I asked the Synod office, do you have any bling, WELS bling? Well, look what they found. From the WELS night at the Brewers, when it was Miller Park, and you can't use it anymore because now it's American Family Field or something, and they had a ton of these old t-shirts. So I gave them out, and people probably wondered in Hanoi what that meant, but... And you can see I'm just an average height, but next to a Hmong guy, you know, I'm Gandalf, and they're the they're the hobbits. Next slide. So part of becoming a world missionary, no matter where you go, or even coming to Yakima from the west side, it's a culture change, and you have to understand cultural things. So part of that is always involved with food. And for pastors, we remember what Jesus told his apostles. Eat whatever is set before you. You so don't question it. So I'm at a roadside restaurant with my partner, Bunkeo, and the Hmong love chicken. It's usually boiled, and it's the whole thing. So he says, Joel, try this. And I'm still learning chopsticks. It's not easy. So, that's interesting. Oh, now try that one. Okay, it's a little squishy, but yeah, that's my favorite. That's chicken, fallopian tube, and testicle. Oh, yummy. I'll put some hot sauce on that next time. Yeah. So that's part of cultural understanding, is getting used to the food, getting used to the coffee, you know, and not having your comfort zone. Exactly. Next one. That one. Another part, now, I was talking with Rick and his wife here, who you have connection to Vietnam, and you might go there. I love Asian food, which is really good because everything important happens over a meal there. Here we're meeting with a government official. We don't go to his office. I've never seen his office. We meet at a restaurant. In this case, it was a Japanese restaurant. And when we meet with the church folks, we go to a restaurant, or they serve a feast in their home. Everything important happens over food. And so it's good to, if you like food, I think most of us do, and you can eat whatever they serve and just eat it, then you'd like being there. Next slide. And, that's the hotel that we stay at. So one more cultural understanding is, this is there's a Japanese area of Hanoi because a lot of other Asian countries have invested in that country since they opened up their economy a bit. There's Korean places and there's Japanese and other Asian groups. I think, in all of Asia, just my opinion, I think Japanese run things better than anybody else. I mean, they make the best cars and really good food, and they're just good at that. So I like this hotel, and we've gotten to know the staff because we keep going back there. And my latest trip, which was last month, I check in at the Kegon Hotel, and the hostess I've come to know speaks very good English. She says, "Welcome back. You look fat. Have you gained weight?" Like, as an American, I'm just offended. Like, okay, I try, no one exceeds at the Battle of the Bulge, really, but so I just kept quiet. And then I thought later, that was a compliment. Because if you're in a culture where you don't get enough to eat, if you're fat and you've gained weight, you are a success. So just flip your mind about some of this stuff. Okay, so next slide. Now more about the WELS Hmong mission in Vietnam, and next one. I mentioned about the Hmong shaman and you may not have caught it because I just made one reference, that he has the tools of Shi Yi, and there's a lot of mythology in Hmong, but to them it's not a myth, it's real. And part of their mythology is that there was a God in the heavens named Shi Yi who was the son of the Almighty God, the Creator. And when they looked upon the earth and they saw all the troubles people were having, all the misery they lived in, and the death that seemed to succumb to all after illness, they had compassion upon this world. And the father said to his son, Shi Yi, "You have the arts of healing. I will send you down to the earth with your magic and your weapons, and you will bring healing." And so he agreed to the will of his father, and he came to this earth. And wherever he went, blessing followed. He even raised the dead and brought healing. It was like the most amazing thing that heaven would send to this miserable earth full of trouble and sorrow and death, the Son of the Heavenly Father. And while he was on earth, he found a woman and got married and had a son. I told you it was a myth, so you don't question how do gods have sons, but he did. And his wife and son went back up to heaven while he continued his work on earth, but he didn't realize his mortal enemy, who was an evil spirit from hell called Unsungju, had attacked his family and killed his son while he was on earth. He returns to heaven victorious, but finds out his own son has died by his enemy. And so he feels like all the work he did, produced nothing because of the death of his son. But he gets a message from a pig, because in Hmong ritual, to enter the spirit realm, it involves a lot of animal sacrifice. Little problems, chickens. Big problems, pigs. So the pig said, Shi Yi, in your healing, you've sacrificed so many animals, and they're all dead. If you will bring all of them back to life, we will help you bring your son back to life. And Shi thought about it, and he refused that. He said, I can't take that deal. So in frustration, he threw all his magic tools down to the earth. And now every Hmong shaman believes that he has the tools of Shi Yi to enter the spirit realm. More about that later. So next one, I think just some more pictures of Shi Yi and Hmong mythology. Next one. And this image you've probably seen. You might even have an old picture there on the wall. Some WELS churches do, from when you first began to learn, or I first began to learn about the opportunity there. I didn't know any of the history or background, but you heard that we had an opportunity to build a theological education center in Hanoi to train the Hmong. And the WELS promoted that and raised funds over $2 million to do that. And it's taken a long time, but I'll show you later. It's actually built, although we can't use it yet. And the mission has expanded, and God has blessed it with or without the building. But you've heard about it from that image, which is beautiful terraced hills up in North Vietnam where they grow the rice. Next one. So the Hmong people, Some of you have heard about that culture, but I've met Asians who've never heard about the Hmong either. They are an ethnic minority. There is no Hmong land or Hmong country, but their history does go back to China. And in the 19th century, they had a kingdom in China that grew in wealth and power, and more in the central area of China. But the Chinese were also rising in power under the Han Dynasty. They saw the Hmong as a threat, and they drove them out. And most of them settled, millions of them, in southern China. But others were also driven out from there and settled in Burma and Thailand and Laos and Vietnam and other Asian countries. So that's why they have no homeland. Today they've kind of settled on Laos as a homeland because so many ended up there, and they had property and history there for hundreds of years. Well, you may have learned about them from the United States. So next one. They became our allies in the fight against communism in Southeast Asia. First, the so-called secret war in Laos, which we weren't supposed to know about, so maybe you don't. The government keeps secrets from us, you know that. And they wanted to defeat the Pathet Lao in Laos, so they recruited the Hmong as soldiers. And they already knew the Hmong had a great reputation with flintlock rifles and bows and arrows and spears of hunting and proficiency in war. Then they got modern armaments, and most vets I meet, now I don't know in the Air Force if you met any Hmong there, yeah, they have great admiration for the Hmong and great regret. The great regret is that we left so many behind. We made them a promise, you serve with us, we'll get you back here, and we just couldn't fulfill that promise. Then in the Vietnam War, the CIA trained Hmong soldiers, and the father of my partner, Bunkeo Lor, trained his entire village to rescue downed pilots. He has fantastic stories about what he did for our United States military members. So we are very grateful to the Hmong people, and there is a connection between the Hmong and America, and that connection allowed some of them to come and settle here. So next one. Most Hmong who've come here, and they're in the hundreds of thousands, settled in California. So you met them in Clovis and Fresno, but the highest concentration is the Twin Cities, and many in Wisconsin and other places in Minnesota. And that does have a connection to the overall story and Vietnam. Next slide. I mentioned in my sermon this belief in the spirit realm. It's really, the devil peddles the same lies over and over again from the very beginning. And in Africa and Asia and Native America too, they're all spirit religions. You know, there might be a great spirit, because there's always greater gods and lesser ones. But everything has a spirit, and your life revolves around balancing these spirits between good and bad. And you live in fear and dread that some evil spirit comes after you, and you're going to be in deep trouble. Like the Hmong, many of them have a belief that there's an evil dragon spirit in large bodies of water, and so they're very careful around water. And they have stories of people who are swallowed up in the water and drown. And they believe that was the dragon spirit who got his vengeance against Hmong people. So a lot of fear. The devil just uses that to keep people away from the gospel. But praise God, we've gotten the gospel there. So next one. These are just pictures of ugly gods. And again, it doesn't matter if you're in Africa or in Asia or India, you see these kinds of gods. They're always very terrifying, the way gods are portrayed. Just contrast that with a picture of Jesus, who's the Prince of Peace. And a good portrait of Jesus by a Christian artist just compels you to say, I want that person in my life. But these are like, I want to avoid these people. Next. And as I mentioned, the history goes back to China. Next. And some of these beliefs are there. And here's a picture of two shamans. And they don't think of their beliefs as religion. They wouldn't describe it that way. To them, it's how you understand life. And a shaman can be male or female, it doesn't matter. But they have special powers, and it's kind of like you recognize it as they're growing up. For example, an epileptic would, with the tremors of the body, that would be an indication of spiritual power. And so that's a revered person in the Hmong community because you believe the epileptic can enter the spirit realm that others cannot. And they have a ritual, as I mentioned, it's the slaughter of an animal, because the belief is as the animal is dying, the blood is draining out, there's a pathway to the spirit world through the death of the animal. And they do eat it too. But so he enters that realm and often puts a covering over the face and has a ritual of kind of dancing on a board until he believes, or he convinces others, that he's gone into the realm. And what is he looking for? A lost soul, because the belief is that each person has multiple souls, maybe as many as a dozen. And when bad luck happens or illness, one of your souls has escaped and you need help. You could try with herbs and rituals to do it yourself, but big problems require the shaman. And he can go in there and trick the spirits, not overcome them. He doesn't have that power. It's not like Jesus, who can drive out demons, but he can trick them and bring the soul back and restore the health of the body. That's the belief. Next slide. So, and it involves a cycle of reincarnation, similar to Hindu beliefs, but it's their own unique take on it, that there's a travel journey of the soul, that part of the soul after death, and it must make a proper journey based on, in Hindu terms like karma, that you re-enter a better life after that. But it's an unending cycle, and I mentioned in my sermon, they only have a concept of hell, not of heaven. So there's really no end to this misery. Next one. Some of the superstitions, it's always avoiding evil spirits, and you see there's a beautiful baby wrapped in some Hmong cloth with embroidery, and if you saw that child, oh, what a beautiful baby, and they might slap you in the face. You should call it an ugly baby, because you're tricking the spirits. If you say it's a beautiful baby, one of the spirits who's hanging around nearby, and they aren't real smart spirits, I think, will conclude that, oh, I don't want to steal the soul of an ugly baby, but if it's beautiful, I would do that. So you just tricked the spirit with that. And to avoid the spirit, this is true in Africa too, they put a string around the wrist or the neck, and that's supposed to give spiritual power. A little bit. Next one. Another picture of the shaman. Next one. And another superstition is if you point at the moon when you see it in the sky, the moon will cut your ear. My Hmong language teacher from the Twin Cities, this is all online, but she believed that. It's really sad. She was a Christian and then returned to Spiritism. But it was a good teacher. And she said that happened to her as a kid, that she forgot, pointed at the moon, and when she woke up in the morning, there was a cut. Now, how does that happen? The devil does all kinds of amazing things. Next one. The Hmong did not have a written language until a Catholic missionary in the 1950s invented an alphabet for them. So they, kind of like Native American with the stories on their teepees, they put it in story cloth and embroidery. The ladies are really good at embroidery. And this is a traditional story of the Hmong, oppressed and driven away. And there's a lot of significance for them of the Mekong River, because they settled in Laos, and we didn't win that war against the Pathet. Laos is still a communist country. And they sought safety in Thailand, and that meant crossing the Mekong River. If you had money, you'd hire a ferry to get across. But not many had that. You'd try to swim, you might drown. And you've got soldiers shooting at you. So many Hmong died in the Mekong, but those that made it across would find refugee camps, and eventually, with many blessings, they might make it to another country, even the United States. Next one. The Hmong have traditional clans that go back to China, and about 18 of them, I've seen different numbers, 18, some 16, some 24, and you indicate your clan by your name. So my partner is Monkeo Lor. He belongs to the Lor clan. They believe they have a connection to Hmong royalty, so they're a little bit higher than others. And there's a Mua clan, which we have two WELS trained pastors who are of the Mua clan. One is Pao Mua. The pastors here know him from Anchorage. He has the Hmong mission in Anchorage. And anybody in your clan, that's your relative. So shortly after I got the call and I was learning things, I went, someone must have come to visit, and you take them to Seattle, and you always go to the Pike Place Market. Like, there's no other place to go. And you walk that place where the flowers are. And I just hadn't noticed that those were Hmong ladies. They're Hmong farms around the Carnation area. And I saw the Lore name. And I took a picture of it, and I sent it to Bunke, who said, oh, yeah, that's my uncle. Now, I think he's never met that person. But that's his last name. So he has a family connection. He's a cousin or an uncle, depending on the age of the person, and so on. And that's like a golden pass. Because one of my trips over there last year with Bonkeo, we had some extra days, and he says, you want to go to Laos? Sure, why not? He gets us the visas, we travel there, and he takes me to a Hmong village, and we're hungry. We stop at the side of the road. It's a delicious roasted chicken and sticky rice. And as we're chatting, what do you know? The lady who runs the stand is a Lore. So immediately she says, you must come to our house. You must stay the night. And with me along, Boone, no, he said, no, I got this white guy. I can't do, I'm a good excuse for him. Otherwise, he would have been stuck there. So that's the kind of connection you have within your clan. That's maybe the good side. But the bad side is we're always dividing ourselves. So you don't always get along with the other clan. Just like, it's Eastern Washington and Western Washington, we make jokes about each other. ELS and WELS, Packer fans and Viking fans and Seahawks fans. So it's a good thing, but there's some strife involved there too. Next. And you see the outfits are very beautiful many times, and there's rituals that you wouldn't understand. When a marriage happens, there's a possibility of kidnapping. And it's just part of their tradition, and if you don't understand it, you're going to think a crime is happening. And indeed, in Hmong communities in the United States, when the kidnapping takes place, people call the police. And they come and they don't understand that you're trying to trick the spirits. So if your gal is too willing to enter this marriage, evil spirits might say, well, that's a good person, and I'm going to take her soul. But if she has to be forced into it, oh, that's an evil person, I'm not going to bother with that person. So I'm just learning things all the time. Every trip I make, I learn more things about the culture. I'll never fully understand it. But next one. You've maybe seen some of these outfits in America. They'll wear them for some of the festivals. This past summer, I went to the Hmong National Conference in Manitowoc, and on Sunday for church, the ladies wore this. Not many men wore their traditional outfits, and they had special choirs and things. So it's very beautiful, and I'm waiting for my Hmong stool. Larry Schlomer is the head of World Missions. He already has one. And he's not a missionary to the Hmong. I am, and I don't have one. So these are part of the inequities of the WELS system. But along with the whole world, we're diversity, equity, inclusion. We're going to fix that, and I'll get my Hmong stole. I look forward to it. Next one. Another tradition of very elaborate beliefs about death, as many cultures have, that the soul just hovers around for a while. It doesn't immediately go anywhere. And you have to have all the right rituals to have a good journey. And the funerals may take a week because you invite the whole clan to come. And you're kind of obligated to go, especially an important clan leader. When people are finally gathered, there's a special instrument called the king, and it's a flute, bamboo flute. And they believe it does not play any notes. Instead, it expresses words. And the words are things that help the soul in the spirit realm for a proper journey. And the proper journey would mean, as it's hovering nearby, near the body, and the body may be in the home hut, hung on a pole, decomposing, it needs to go back to the mother's placenta, which, if properly done, was buried under the birth hut. But the birth hut may not be in that village. It may be some distance away in a different country. The journey may take a while, and the king is to help the journey of the soul back to the mother's placenta to a better reincarnation. So if you fail in any of those steps, you are cursing your ancestors, and they are going to curse you. You better do it right. A lot of fear and superstition. Next one. I started to learn the Hmong language and a little bit of Vietnamese, and it's fun, but very difficult. People have told me that Hmong is the most difficult tonal language in the world. It has 8 tones, so the same word said 8 different ways means 8 different things. So it could be, I may not remember all 8 tones here, but pa is a breathy tone. There's ba is a high tone. Ba is kind of a jumpy tone. Ba is a flat tone. Ba is a down tone. I didn't get them all. But those all mean different things. But to my ear, it's pa. Yeah, and I have, the way we were trained in our system, if I see the text, I have an easier time translating. But hearing it is really difficult. Vietnamese has 5 tones, but that's difficult too. So recently I'm trying to learn the Vietnamese names for animals, and there's con chao and con chao. Now, maybe you heard a little con chao and con chao, but when I hear it, I say, is that a dog or a buffalo? I get it wrong all the time on Duolingo, but it's a struggle. I'll never become fluent, but the goal for me is that I could become proficient enough to teach in the Hmong language. Maybe I won't reach that. Now what I do, I say a sentence in English, it gets interpreted in Hmong. And that's the way we work, our system. Next. How did Christianity reach the Hmong so that you have, these are Christian Hmong up in a mountain village, singing from a Hmong hymnal, praises to Jesus Christ. I alluded to this in the sermon, next slide, that the gospel had to come from Christians because, we have the word of Jesus to go to all nations with the good news. So where did these Christians come from? There's a group, a church body called the Christian Missionary Alliance, and as their name implies, they're all about missions. They're not Lutherans, but they are Christian. And they, next slide, had a radio station in Manila and wanted to broadcast into communist Vietnam to the Hmong people up in the mountains. So they found a Hmong pastor who had a very nice voice, and they started broadcasting. This is like 1950s. And very few people even owned radios, but as they're tuning the dial and hearing a lot of Vietnamese, all of a sudden, they hear Hmong. It'd be like Pastor Teskey turning the dial, all of a sudden he hears German. It's like, oh, Muttersprach. And it really draws them in, and they're hearing the story about this Jesus guy. They never heard of him, but they had their own tradition of a returning king who had gone to heaven and would come back and establish an earthly kingdom where the Hmong would have glory and honor and power and rule the world. And they start to associate their Hmong myth with Jesus, and it draws more people in. Now, eventually they learn, he's the Savior that died for your sins, but it's not very clear. Next slide. And they don't have a Bible, but they're all bilingual. They know Hmong, they know Vietnamese. So they find a Vietnamese Bible, which God uses all kinds of things. The Catholics have been there for centuries, and they aren't anything we support, but they do produce Christian materials, including a Bible. So they started to understand more through a Vietnamese Bible, and eventually next they do get a Hmong Bible, but the message is confusing. It'd be like if you drop down in the middle of Leviticus with the stories about infectious skin diseases, and you know what? I don't even want to learn about this stuff and the white hair and ugh. So you need some assistance. And eventually, next slide, assistance came through missionaries who came through, some illegally, but they were talking about Jesus, so they're understanding a little bit more about his crucifixion and what that means. And next slide. But there's nothing consistent in the teaching that goes on. So there's a little bit of gospel and a lot of other things. Next slide. And what happens so often in these situations, next slide, is Christianity, next slide, becomes a matter of rules because it's the easiest form. It's legalism. So if you want to be a good Christian, believe in Jesus and don't drink and don't smoke. and wear white on Thursday, or whatever the rule is. And that's the form that came upon most people in the Hmong community who believed in Jesus. There was gospel, but a lot of law, and they did not understand grace. Kelu. Next one. So how did God's grace reach these people? It's a really interesting story. They're gathering in their own churches. That's a picture of one. Next slide. They're hearing the word of God. They're singing hymns. Next. And they're still confused. So here, one of the Hmong leaders named Pastor Ha here gathered together the 5 elders and said, we need clarity on this. Let's pray that God would send one guy. We could get connected with just one guy, not all these people that show up, and he would show us the way. And they gave, next slide, Pastor Zhang here, no, next one, gave the assignment, you find him. Well, one of the great blessings we've seen in world missions is technology allows the gospel to go to places it never could before. You don't have infrastructure in many of these countries to build poles and string lines, but a cell phone tower and a cell phone, you reach people in the mountains. And through that technology, Pastor Zong went online looking for Hmong materials. He found the defunct website of the WELS mission in Kansas City. Here's the great sin of pastors. They don't keep their websites up to date. It doesn't have fresh content. They don't pay their fees, and it goes away. Well, Pastor Bunkeo Lor had neglected to take care of the website, but somehow it still stayed online, and his old sermons were there. Pastor Zong found one of them, and there he found a Lutheran, a WELS-trained Lutheran, explaining the gospel in a way he'd never heard, that it's the undeserved love of God for sinners. It's not your works. And it was such a breath of fresh air. It was like Martin Luther's tower experience, where heaven opened and the light came on. So next slide. He wanted to contact Pastor Lor, upper left, and eventually he got contact with him, called him. Pastor Lor is fluent in Hmong, and invites him to come to Vietnam. Next slide. And it happens because Pastor Lor loves the Hmong. No matter where they are, he is not from Vietnam. He's from Laos. He speaks about 6 languages, but not Vietnamese. He knows Chinese, he knows Thai, he knows Laotian, he knows Hmong, he knows English. There must be one more I forgot, but and he wants to learn Vietnamese too. And he comes over and he can teach them in Hmong because that's their language. And it's the things we take for granted in our WELS background, but is fresh and new to them that they've never heard before, and they're so hungry for more and more of this grace-based teaching. So he starts himself. He has Pastor Bob Smith, WELS pastor from Nebraska, helps him a little bit. And eventually, next, it gets the attention of our Pastoral Studies Institute at the Wisconsin Lutheran Seminary. A relatively new program, didn't exist back in our day when we went through the seminary. But they developed this program where they can train pastors in their setting. So in the Hispanic mission here, you know this, if you had a leader who wanted to become a spiritual leader, he could take all the seminary classes here in Yakima. Pastor Lambert would teach him, Pastor Teskey and others. You know, you get a team together and they train him. That has happened in our district. Some of you know Pastor Park at the Korean mission in Holy Trinity. He went through the PSI program. We trained a bunch of us trained him. The pastor Chung Wong in Vancouver received the same training and is now an ordained WELS Chinese pastor to the Chinese community in Vancouver. And the Sudanese outreach, there's a group in Renton and there's one in Vancouver, and they have leaders going through the training. So same thing, but here it's in another country, and it's a whole excellent curriculum that the seminary guides, and they bring seminary professors, including, that's Alan Sorum there. Now, he's not average height. He's like 6'5". He's a big guy. He was in school when I was, and he was the defensive line. Just him. They didn't need 10 other players. It's just Alan Sorum. So you see the expression on his face? He's like, is this all I get? This little bowl? And I have to use these sticks? How am I going to get enough food here? Now, he gets by fine. He's still part of our team there. Next slide. And they keep training, and eventually favorable conditions happen where we need the government permission, and they say, why don't you come here and build a building and train your people in Hanoi? So here we're signing documents to purchase land and build the building, and that's part of the story. Next slide. But even without the building, next one, the training goes on in a rented facility in Hanoi, and people coming over, and I only knew a little bit about it from a WELS connection and so on. But then the program became, next slide, to establish that building there. You can just keep going through the next couple ones. These are more pictures of eating and churches that are meeting. Next one. And back to the classroom, next one. Back to the next one. And here's some of the great blessings that come out of this. Here's Pastor, I know him as Hua Va, and there he's Pastor Vang. I have learned to show compassion to the sinner. I have learned to show Christ to the sinner. And he admits that before our training, when people came to church, he scolded them for all their sins. Here's another week went by, and you still committed sins. What's wrong with you? He has no gospel. And he was miserable and they were miserable. But through our training, he teaches the grace of God through Jesus Christ. And now he loves what he does, the people love the message, and the church has grown. Next slide is another testimony from Pastor Ha. What I've noticed is that now my members respect me even more than they ever did when I only used the law, rules, and traditions to lead them. That, like I said, it's all new to them. It's exciting for us. It's old. We've known it all our lives. But they're so eager to learn. Is when I get done teaching one class, they want to go on to the next one. Like I taught a class on the Psalms, and we could only cover 12. They said, well, what about the the other 138 of them? Aren't you going to get to them? I said, okay, let's continuing education. We'll do it later. So that's like nothing I ever experienced. As pastors will tell you, you get a crowd for worship, but you don't get many for Bible class. Never the same amount. But here, they're so eager to have this training. Next slide. So we have continued that on, and there's some historical things going. You can just keep going through the slides here. Keep going. I want a little time for questions. That's when they went to the Synod building. That's a picture of Hanoi. Next one. This is the original property next, which we don't have anymore. Next one. And we advanced the cause by training teachers' assistants, and we're working with them. Because the whole idea is not to keep sending missionaries, but to train them to do their own education. That's our system. Next one. My calling, I talked about that. Next one. And then right when I accepted the call, it was just the midst of COVID. A few weeks after I accepted the call, Governor Inslee shut everything down here. We went through that whole time, and it included a ban on travel, so we could no longer travel to teach. And it took a while, a number of months, but we got connected with Zoom. Everybody's learned Zoom since then. We had to supply phones and pay for some internet access, but we got all our students connected, and all the teaching I've done has all happened on Zoom, even when I've gone to Vietnam. It's just the circumstances have dictated that. But what a blessing that even without a building there, the training has gone on and even expanded because of Zoom. Zoom actually works a little better in some ways because they're all small subsistence farmers, and they can take like a 2-hour class in the morning, 3-hour in the afternoon, and between that, they can go work in the rice field or whatever. They don't have to travel all the way to Hanoi. Next slide. So eventually we did get back there even under COVID restrictions, next one, which was wild. I won't go into all that. But we had this long-term goal of a building. That's the plan, and you can keep going. And now the result. This is the way we saw it in September, and go forward. In the midst of, I want to show you how they followed the OSHA standards here. Next slide. This is typical construction in Yakima too, is you build a concrete floor and then you use bamboo poles to hold it up until the concrete cures. Yeah. Well, you use what you have. And now I've been in the completed building, and it holds up. So it worked. I guess you do what you have to. Next slide. And these are those that manage our funds for the Synod. Sean Young on the left, who's now just in home missions, and Stefan Felgenhauer, who's just in world missions. And they went with me for this tour. Next one. And that's a view of the chapel then. Next one. And now the completed building, and Bonkeo Laura and I actually held the deed to the property. Now, it doesn't mean the same as in America. It's a communist country. The Vietnam owns everything. So what you get is a lease, basically, for millions of dollars. We have a lease to use the property and the building. Next slide. So we toured it. There was the final inspection, as if we know what a building should look like, but we inspected it and approved it. But next slide. A problem remains that the group we work with, called the Hmong Fellowship Church, does not have official status in Vietnam, and so right now we can't use this building. It's done. We should be in there teaching, so pray about that. I don't know when that gets resolved, but right now we can't use it. Next slide. But eventually we'll get there. There are the 5 Hmong leaders that we work with. Next. And another complication is right now I don't have the proper visa to go there. Recently I traveled on a tourist visa, 30-day single entry. I can't live there on that, and I have to come back here. I need this longer-term visa, and I don't have it yet. Bunkeo has it, but it's just an ongoing issue. Next. Once I get it, that gives me a more permanent status. Go ahead. So the training continues on Zoom. You might be in small Zoom calls. I'm in big Zoom calls. There's 60 people, so that's 3 pages on there. And I use the breakout rooms so they can have some discussion amongst themselves. Next. But the training on Zoom, 2 years ago, they wanted to celebrate 8 years. I don't know why 8, but they did. They just wanted to thank the WELS for all. They're always so thankful to the WELS. Every time we meet, they sum it up by saying, thank you so much to the WELS for your support. Next one. And just a testimony that the gospel still goes out to the Hmong. In the upper left is a lady burning the family altar. She became a member of one of our churches, and as a testimony to her community that she no longer believed in the spirit worship, she burned that altar in front of everybody, as if to say, let's see what the devil does now. Because I'm standing on Jesus. Next slide. They are building their own churches. We haven't paid for any of that, and they're really nice, simple structures, but they work well. Next slide. And during the COVID time, we started a new program. I mentioned we're doing even more, and it was to get the training from the leaders that we work with down to the congregation. We developed a whole new curriculum on a simpler level that we could train them and they could go, and that's ongoing. We work with a group of 60, they train 700, and the 700 go out to the 140,000. And they love this program. It's worked very well, but it's really hard to fit time in for it because we're doing 2 seminary groups and plus this training. Well, pray about that too. Next one. And there is I trained them in the Gospel of Mark, and this is when they went out and taught it in their churches. Next. When we went back to Vietnam under the restrictions, that was the first group that went. Next. And I got there later that year, still on Zoom. Next. I should clean these up. They're a little repetitious. But one of my visits last year, they finally, in March, they removed all COVID restrictions because they needed tourist money. And so I was able to travel up to the north of Sapa to visit this pastor, and this was his home and his corn and rice field, and I really enjoyed it a lot. Next slide. Another testimony, next slide. And they sometimes film their testimony just to show their thanks for the WELS. Next slide. And this is, I'll just let this play, shows you a little glimpse of Hanoi. And at the end is a worship service. Yeah, rush hour, motorbikes go up on the sidewalk. So watch out. It was the rainy season. And we'd gone there to find a special restaurant, which we did find. One good thing, the motorbikes are never going very fast, because to cross the street, you just start walking, and the bikes go around. That's the way to do it. Don't be afraid. They know what they're doing. You just keep the same pace, and you can get across. This is a wet market, yeah, like the one in Wuhan. They had live eels that day, and by the time we came through after our restaurant, they were all gone. So, I could have boiled one in my room or something. I did not get sick on any of the food there, so I recommend it. Everything was good. And then they never had a church in Hanoi, because they're all in the north, in villages. But with our efforts, they have now established a small group in the city, and we got to attend one of their services here. There's Stefan, Pastor Zong. That's Pastor Zong's son, so the next generation that we're training. And this is another student in our courses. They're about to graduate this spring, if everything works out. And we'd also like to dedicate the building, if that works out. But we want to be able to use it before that happens. And I think that's about the end. Yeah, so you can just go to the next slide. I think it'll just stay there. And I've got like 2 minutes if you have any questions. Yeah. I gotta hear it again. What? Oh, no, Jesus is protecting you. Don't worry about that. We don't. Yes, yeah, I know. You hear about superstitions. I mean, even like when I was a kid, don't ever step on a crack on a sidewalk. I still go over it. I mean, it's ridiculous, but you learn things and you think, yeah, I better do the four-leaf clover or whatever. But yeah. Truth is, Jesus is in charge, don't worry. Good question. Yeah.
The Hmong language, is that like a Chinese type language, or is it related to Vietnamese or Thai or something?
Yeah, it has some connections to Chinese, but the Hmong don't like the Chinese because they were driven out. So they refused to use the Chinese alphabet, which I'm thankful for. When it got written down, they used our Romanized alphabet. But there are some... Like, I find crossover between Vietnamese words and Hmong words, not frequently, and some of the structure and grammar is similar. So I think when you learn one Asian language, it does help you with others. Yeah. So the reason they say, and then you wonder what's the real reason, which might be something like this. The reason they say is that we work with a group called the Hmong Fellowship Church, which does not have official status recognized by the government. And so they have to somehow get that status, and we don't even know how to help them. Like when we met with the government agent, when we only work with one guy, and Stefan Felgenauer was there, we said, well, why don't you take us to the office? We'll go with you. We'll explain our situation. We'll start the process. Oh, no. Everything must come through me. Every request you have must come through me. That makes me suspicious, but it's the only way we know how to do it. We don't know how it works there. So we're waiting for that one guy to tell us what to do, and he hasn't told us yet. So we don't know. Yep.
So you're working on being able to live over there and work over there?
Yeah, that's...
Kathy going with you is my question?
I hope so. Yeah, if she doesn't, you check in on her once in a while. Yeah.
When you get to go, then she gets to go too?
Yeah, so we both need this more permanent visa. That's a big thing. And the ability to use that building. Otherwise, it's no point to going there. If we're going to teach online, I might as well do that from Port Orchard. Yeah. That's the one government guy. It all goes through him. And he hasn't told us. Yeah, it's a mystery.
We tried
Yes. His son is attending Wisconsin Lutheran High School. And we told him, you know, if your son goes to our Lutheran High School, he might become a Christian. And that's okay. Yeah. I don't know if that helps, but it's possible. Well, thank you so much for your support. There are a few things on WELS.net that you can learn more about this. And as we eat lunch, you can talk to me too. So thank you very much for your support.
I like the chicken thing.
Yeah.
We went to their Christmas dinner when I was over
Oh.
there.
I believe
They were
that
all
our
Christian.
goal, our stated goal was to make no one
But
use
the
the
bottom
stairs.
line